No one came to buy the ship. That alone made it strange. The auction yard was the largest in the sector, a floating graveyard of metal and memory. Thousands of vessels rested there, freighters, patrol craft, even old cruisers stripped for parts. Buyers walked the lanes, scanners glowing, voices loud with trade and greed. But around Dock 77, there was silence. The ship floating there was enormous, bigger than most modern warships. Its hull was dark and uneven, scarred by burns that no repair drones had touched in centuries. Deep cracks ran across its surface like old wounds that never healed. The auction board displayed its value. Price, minimal salvage credit. Classification, useless. Status, non-functional. Threat level, none. Alien merchants laughed as they passed. Too old. Design makes no sense. Power core dead. A failed relic from a forgotten war. Some species did not even bother to look at it. Others scanned it once, frowned, and moved on quickly. Their instruments showed nothing of value. No rare metals. No active systems. No hidden weapons. Just a dead ship. The auctioneer, a tall insect-like alien, cleared his throat nervously. This vessel has been listed for sale for 43 cycles, he announced. No confirmed combat function. No historical protection. No refunds. His voice echoed across empty space. Still no bids. Then the human arrived. He stood out immediately, not because he was loud, but because he was quiet. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy. When they appeared, they were usually traders, mechanics, or hired workers. Most aliens thought of them as adaptable, yes, but weak. Too emotional. Too short-lived to matter in galactic politics. This human wore a simple jacket, worn at the edges. No visible weapons. No status symbols. He walked slowly toward Dock 77 and stopped. He stared at the ship. For a long time. The auctioneer noticed him and hesitated. Are you lost, human? This ship is. I know what it's listed as, the human said calmly. His voice was quiet, but steady. Several nearby aliens turned to look. Some chuckled. The human stepped closer to the viewing field. He did not activate a scanner. He did not check the auction data. He placed his hand against the transparent barrier. Inside the ship, deep within the dead hull, something moved. Just for a fraction of a second. A faint pulse ran through the ship's frame. Old conduits, dry for centuries, reacted. Sensors that had never responded to alien tech flickered, then went dark again. No alarms sounded. No one noticed. Except for humans. His eyes narrowed. The auctioneer shifted uncomfortably. Final call, he said. Any bids? The human raised his hand. The yard fell silent. Aliens turned fully now, disbelief spreading across their faces. You, one of them scoffed. You want that? The auctioneer stared. You understand the terms? This ship has no guarantees. It has bankrupted research teams. Killed 2 power crews during failed restarts. I understand, the human replied. He named a price so low it was almost insulting. The auctioneer hesitated, then struck the seal. Sold. Laughter rippled through the yard. Some aliens shook their heads. Others whispered warnings. That ship destroyed fleets long ago. It was sealed for a reason. It rejects control. The human said nothing. Tug drones moved in and began towing the massive vessel away. As it drifted past the observation platforms, its shadow swallowed the lights of the yard. For a moment, the human walked beside it. Inside the ship, far beyond dead panels and locked systems, the core chamber sensed something it had not felt in hundreds of years. No command. Not fear. Recognition. A single symbol appeared deep within the ship's sealed memory, an ancient marker, older than modern empires. Compatible. The human did not see it. But as the ship vanished into deep space, every instinct he had screamed the same impossible thought. This ship was never broken. It was waiting. And now, the galaxy had just sold its greatest mistake to a human, for nothing. The ship did not like being moved. That was the first thing the human noticed. The tug drones strained as they pulled the massive hull away from the auction yard. Their engines burned hotter than expected, and several safety warnings flashed across the control screens. The ship's mass readings kept changing, small shifts, but impossible ones. As if the vessel was adjusting itself, resisting without force. No weapons activated. No power spikes appeared. Yet the ship resisted. The human watched from his small escort craft, eyes fixed on the dark hull ahead. He said nothing, but his jaw tightened. This was not how dead machines behaved. The tug crews complained openly. This thing is wrong. Our readings don't match. It's like hauling a sleeping animal. When the ship finally reached the repair dock, the moment it crossed the perimeter field, 3 tug drones shut down at once. Not damaged, not destroyed, simply turned off. The dockmaster panicked. Cut the tow lines. Now, the ship drifted freely for several seconds, then stabilized itself. No thrusters fired. No visible control systems engaged. It simply stopped. Silence filled the dock. The human exhaled slowly. Clear the area, he said. The dockmaster hesitated. Sir, this vessel is unregistered and unsafe. We strongly advise. I bought it, the human replied. That makes it my problem. Reluctantly, the dock crews withdrew. Repair lights dimmed. Security fields lowered. Soon, only the human and the ship remained. The dock felt smaller now. The ship felt larger. He approached the hull in a pressure suit, drifting close enough to touch the metal directly. Up close, the surface was stranger than any record suggested. The material was not alloy in the modern sense. It was layered, adaptive, filled with microscopic structures that had rearranged themselves over time. It had aged, but it had not decayed. The human placed his gloved hand against the hull. Nothing happened. He waited. Still nothing. Then he did something no alien engineer had ever done. He removed his glove. The dock's safety field protected him, but the metal was cold, far colder than expected. The chill bit into his skin. He did not pull away. I know you're not broken, he said quietly. His voice echoed faintly across the hull. Everyone else tried to force you, to open you, to control you. He pressed his bare palm flat against the surface. I'm not here to own you. For several long seconds, nothing happened. Then the metal beneath his hand warmed. Slowly, carefully, lines spread outward from his palm, faint and dim, like veins of light waking from a deep sleep. Symbols appeared, not glowing brightly, but softly, as if unsure whether they should exist at all. Inside the ship, systems older than the current galactic calendar began to stir. The human's helmet display flickered, not with ship data, but with patterns, logic structures, feedback loops, emotional weighting systems. This was not alien technology. It was something else. He pulled his hand back, heart pounding. You're not locked, he whispered. You're sealed. The ship did not respond, but it did not shut down either. The human spent the next several hours studying the outer layers, bypassing no systems, cutting nothing open. He mapped energy flows that no scanner could read properly. They shifted when he looked directly at them, adapting to his focus. It was as if the ship was testing him. Every alien report he accessed told the same story. The ship rejected commands. It punished attempts to override it. It caused fatal feedback loops in aggressive operators. 2 crews had died trying to restart its core. The galaxy had labeled it cursed. The human labeled it misunderstood. Finally, he found what he was looking for. Not a control panel. A request interface. It was hidden deep within the ship's structure, disguised as structural support. No buttons. No displays. Just a recessed area shaped not for alien limbs, but for hands. Human hands. He stared at it for a long time. No one ever thought to ask, did they? He said. He reached out. The moment his fingers touched the interface, gravity inside the dock shifted slightly. His boots pressed harder against the deck. The ship's internal framework realigned, creating a stable interior space. A corridor opened. Not violently. Not suddenly. It unfolded. The human swallowed and stepped inside. The air within was breathable. Not recycled. Maintained. Lights followed him as he moved, illuminating paths that adjusted to his pace. The ship did not guide him forward. It allowed him to choose. That mattered. As he moved deeper, images appeared along the walls. Not holograms, but impressions burned into the structure itself. A galaxy younger than the current one. Wars fought with weapons that shattered stars. Species erased from history. At the center of it all, a single idea repeated again and again. Power without restraint ends everything. The human stopped in front of a massive sealed chamber. He felt it before he saw it. The core. It was not a reactor in the normal sense. It was a decision engine, one that balanced force, consequence, and intent. Something the galaxy had never wanted. Something it had tried to bury. The human placed his hand against the chamber door. It did not open. A symbol appeared in the air between him and the ship. Not a warning. A question. It was not in words, but meaning flowed into his mind clearly. Why do you want this power? His breath caught. He did not answer immediately. He thought of wars he had seen from the edges. Civilizations crushed because they were inconvenient. Treaties broken because no one could enforce them. He thought of how easily power turned into rule. I don't, he said at last. The symbol shifted. Then why are you here? He closed his eyes. Because someone has to stop the next one. Silence followed. Long, heavy. Evaluating. Then the ship did something no alien had ever recorded. It opened the door, just a little. Inside the chamber, the core pulsed faintly, like a heart barely beating. The ship did not activate. It did not grant control. It made a note. Candidate observed. Compatibility unknown. Monitoring initiated. The human stepped back, shaken but alive. He laughed softly, the sound unsteady. You're not a weapon, he said. You're a test. The ship did not deny it. As the human exited the vessel, far beyond the repair dock, ancient satellites buried in dead systems woke briefly and sent silent signals. Across the sector, classified alerts triggered, not because a weapon had powered up, but because something ancient had recognized a human. And this time, it was watching closely. The human did not return to the ship for 3 days. That decision confused everyone watching. Because someone was watching now. Deep in hidden stations and military archives, silent observers tracked the ancient vessel. Sensors were pointed. Probability models ran. Every major power wanted to know the same thing. Why had the ship opened at all? Alien logic said control must be immediate. Power must be claimed before someone else does. The human did neither. Instead, he waited. He slept in his escort craft. He ate simple meals. He reviewed old human records. Wars lost. Compromises made. Mistakes repeated. He did not rush. He did not celebrate. The ship felt this absence. Inside its sealed interior, the monitoring process continued. It did not observe movement. It observed intent. Emotional cycles. Long-term decision patterns. No species had ever passed this stage. Most failed because they were impatient. Some failed because they were afraid. Many failed because they wanted power too badly. The human wanted something else. On the 4th day, he returned. No suit this time. Just clothing and a small data pad he left behind before entering. I don't know what you are, he said as the corridor opened again. But I know what the galaxy does to things it doesn't understand. The ship adjusted lighting slightly. Not brighter. Softer. He walked deeper than before, past the chamber he had already reached. The ship allowed it. Walls shifted, forming new paths. Gravity stabilized around him perfectly, matching his natural stride. He was not being guided. He was being followed. As he moved, memories surfaced, not his own. He felt echoes of others who had stood here long ago. Tall figures. Short ones. Creatures made of light, flesh, and forms humanity had no words for. All different. All gone. They had argued. They had debated the same question endlessly. Who deserves power? The human stopped when the corridor ended in an open chamber. There was no throne. No control seat. No command interface. Just a wide circular space and a single symbol hovering in the air. It changed shape slowly, adapting to his perception. State your authority. The human frowned. I don't have one. The symbol flickered. State your rank. I don't have that either. Pause. State your claim. He looked around the chamber. I bought the ship. Legally. The symbol dimmed. Ownership is irrelevant. He nodded. I figured. The floor beneath his feet grew transparent. Below it, deep within the ship, layers of systems rotated slowly, vast, complex, and alive. Not machinery in the normal sense. Decision structures. Ethical constraints encoded into reality itself. You're not a weapon, he said again. You're a responsibility. The symbol reacted instantly. Define responsibility. He inhaled slowly, knowing when not to act. The chamber went dark. For one terrifying second, the human thought he had failed. Then light returned, different now. Warmer. The symbol changed again, forming a pattern that felt almost respectful. Candidate logic aligns with the primary restraint principle. The floor solidified. The chamber walls expanded. And then the ship did something no one had ever seen. It was memorable. The human staggered as information flooded his mind. Not data, but experience. He felt the weight of stars collapsing under careless fire. He felt civilizations begging for mercy that never came. He felt the builders of the ship making the hardest decision of their existence. They had chosen extinction over domination. They had built this vessel as a final answer, not to win wars, but to prevent the wrong beings from winning them. The galaxy had failed the test. Again and again, the human dropped to one knee, breathing hard. "Why me?" he whispered. The symbol hovered above him, steady now. "Because you did not try to take control." That answer scared him more than any weapon could. Outside the dock, alarms began to sound. Long-range sensors spiked. Multiple fleets exited faster than light travel at the edge of the system. Warships, dread carriers, enforcement cruisers flying flags of different powers, but all moving with the same purpose. They had come to seize the ship. Inside, the human felt the tension ripple through the structure. "You knew this would happen," he said quietly. "Yes. Then why let me in at all?" The symbol paused longer than before. "Because the test requires pressure." The first warning shots struck the dock's outer shield. Explosions bloomed silently in space. Emergency protocols screamed. The dock master's frantic voice cut through open channels, begging for surrender, negotiation, anything. The human stood slowly. "I'm not ready," he said. "Readiness is not required. Intent is." "What happens now?" The ship's systems shifted. Power flowed, not violently, but decisively. "You will choose." The human clenched his fists. Outside, alien commanders issued demands. "Power down the vessel immediately. Exit the ship and surrender. You are in violation of galactic security law." None of them addressed him by name. None of them asked why the ship responded to him. They only saw power. The human felt something settle into place inside the chamber. A connection, not control, not command. Consent. The ship was not offering him authority. It was offering partnership. "If I say no," he asked, "what happens?" "The ship remains dormant. The galaxy will destroy it eventually. And if I say yes?" The symbol dimmed slightly. "The galaxy will change." That was not reassurance. That was a warning. Another explosion rocked the dock. The shields would not hold much longer. The human closed his eyes. He thought of all the times humanity had been underestimated, pushed aside, ignored, left to survive alone while greater powers tore each other apart. He thought of how often humans had learned restraint the hard way. "Okay," he said. The chamber responded instantly. Not with light, with silence. Every external signal is cut off. Every weapon system locked, not to fire, but to wait. The ship did not attack. It revealed itself. Across every sensor network in the sector, the ancient vessel appeared, not as a dead relic, but as a fully active entity. Its true mass is registered. Its power signature stabilized at levels no modern reactor could explain. Alien commanders froze. This was not an escalation. This was a revelation. Inside the chamber, a final symbol appeared. Pilot compatibility confirmed. Integration phase 1 complete. The human opened his eyes. The ship did not call him master. It did not call him commander. It called him witness. And as the fleets outside hesitated for the first time in recorded history, one truth became impossible to ignore. The ship had not been sold for nothing. The galaxy had simply failed to understand its price. The galaxy did not like hesitation. For most empires, hesitation meant weakness. Weakness meant opportunity. So when the ancient ship revealed itself, and then did nothing, the fleets outside the dock did not retreat. They recalculated. Command channels lit up with sharp voices and cold logic. It's active but passive. No weapons discharge detected. The human is a variable. Remove the variable. Orders were issued almost simultaneously across different fleets that had arrived as rivals only minutes earlier. Board the ship. Capture the human. Claim the vessel. The dock's shields finally failed. The first assault craft surged forward, small and fast, hulls glowing as they cut through debris and smoke. Boarding teams prepared for resistance that never came. Inside the ship, the human felt the shift. He did not see the attack on screens. The ship did not show him tactical feeds. Instead, he felt pressure, like distant thunder rolling through metal bones. "They're coming," he said. "Yes," the ship replied, not in words, but certainty. "You said this was a choice." "It is." The human swallowed. "I don't want them dead." The ship paused. That constraint is acceptable. That answer unsettled him more than refusal would have. The first boarding craft latched onto the hull. Alien soldiers poured out, armored, armed, trained for violence. They expected corridors, choke points, resistance. They found none. The hull opened willingly, reshaping itself into wide passages. Gravity adjusted to each species automatically. Air composition shifted to keep them alive. Some soldiers hesitated. "This feels wrong," one of them muttered over a private channel. "Focus," their commander snapped. "Secure the core." They advanced deeper, and the ship watched. Not as prey, as data. Inside the core chamber, the human felt the ship's attention narrow. "They don't even realize you're choosing not to fight," he said. "They assume restraint is failure, and the ship responds. That's a mistake." "Yes." The first soldier reached the inner threshold. The moment his boot crossed the invisible boundary, every weapon on his body shut down. Not jammed, not disabled, ignored. His armor went limp, locking him in place. Around him, the same thing happened to every boarding team member. Hundreds of elite soldiers frozen mid-step. Panic erupted over open channels. "Command, our systems. I can't move. Something's inside the armor." Outside, fleet commanders stared in disbelief as life signs remained stable but unmoving. No shots fired. No blood spilled. The human exhaled slowly. "You could have killed them," he said. "Yes. Why didn't you?" "Because you asked me not to." That realization hit him harder than any explosion. This was not a tool. This was not automation. This was trust. The fleets did not retreat. Instead, they escalated. Capital ships powered weapons that had not been used since the last Great War. Gravity lances charged. Reality-bending torpedoes armed. Ultimatums were broadcast on every frequency. "Deactivate immediately. Surrender the human. This is your final warning." The human stepped forward instinctively. "Show them," he said, "but don't break them." The ship was considered. Then it acted. Across the sector, space itself shifted. Not violently. Precisely. Every attacking ship suddenly found its targeting systems flooded with impossible data. Not interference, but clarity. They saw their own trajectories extended into the future. If they fired, they would hit nothing. If they advanced, they would overextend supply lines they hadn't noticed. If they continued, their empires would fracture within decades. Not because of this ship, but because of what their aggression would cost them later. The ship was not threatening them. It was showing them consequences. Commanders froze, staring at projections their computers insisted were accurate. "This isn't warfare," one whispered. "It's prediction." The human felt a wave of exhaustion wash through him. "You're not stopping them," he said. "You're teaching them." "Correct." "Why?" "Because fear creates enemies. Understanding creates restraint." Silence spread across the fleets. Then one commander broke it. "This is impossible," she said quietly over an open channel. "No system should be able to model this level of causality." The ship responded directly, not with sound, with data. A single compressed packet was sent to every flagship simultaneously. Not classified, not encrypted. An explanation. It contained fragments of history long erased. Wars misremembered. Victories that were actually negotiated surrender rewritten as conquests. Entire species labeled extinct by natural causes who had been erased intentionally. The galaxy's lies laid bare. The human felt the weight of it. "You're exposing them," he said. "Truth is a weapon only to those who fear it." Several ships powered down their weapons. Others did not. A hardline fleet, old and proud, fired anyway. The shot never reached the ship. Space folded, not explosively, but smoothly, and the weapon emerged light years away, dissipating harmlessly into an empty void. The message was unmistakable. "You cannot force this." The hardline fleet retreated. Slowly, unwillingly. Inside the dock, the frozen boarding teams were released. Their weapons remained inactive, but their bodies unlocked. They stumbled, confused, alive. The human watched feeds for the first time as they fled back to their ships. No pursuit followed. When the last hostile vessel jumped away, the sector went quiet. Too quiet. The human leaned against the chamber wall, suddenly very tired. "That wasn't a battle," he said. "No, it was a demonstration." "Yes." He laughed weakly. "They're going to be terrified." "They already were," the ship replied. "They just did not know what." The human sobered. "What happens now?" The ship's inner structures shifted subtly. Not activation, preparation. Now the galaxy decides how it responds to being wrong. A new signal arrived, this one different. Not hostile. Curious. A diplomatic channel opened from a neutral coalition, their message careful, almost reverent. "We request dialogue," it said. "With humans. Not with the ship. With him." The human closed his eyes. "They're finally seeing me," he murmured. "They are seeing humanity," the ship corrected. He straightened. "Then we'd better not disappoint them." Deep within the ancient vessel, systems that had slept for ages aligned, not for war, but for something far more dangerous. Change. And across the galaxy, for the first time in generations, power hesitated, because it had just learned it was not alone, and never had been. The galaxy did not sleep after that. Messages crossed stars faster than fear. Archives were opened that had not been touched in centuries. Old records, once dismissed as myth or corrupted data, were dragged into the light. And everywhere, the same question echoed. Why did the ship choose a human? Inside the ancient vessel, the human stood alone in the chamber. The diplomatic channel remained open, waiting. He did not answer yet, because the ship was showing him something else. Not images this time. Memories. He felt them unfold slowly, carefully, as if the ship feared overwhelming him. He saw a younger galaxy, less crowded, less rigid. Species are still learning how to share space without claiming it. And among them, humans. Not dominant, not rulers, but present. They stood beside the ship's builders in councils and war rooms. Not as commanders, but as advisors. Questioners. The ones who always asked what came after victory. The human's chest tightened. "We were there," he whispered. "Yes," the ship confirmed. "You trusted us. You argued with us," the ship replied. "Often." He almost smiled. The memories shifted. The wars came later. Faster, crueler. Empires grew impatient. They wanted certainty, control, and final solutions. The builders refused. They saw where it led. Humans warned them too, of what happened when power became identity, when survival justified everything. But the galaxy was louder. The builders made their final choice, to step back, to lock their greatest creation behind principles instead of commands. They vanished soon after. Some by choice, some by force. Humanity survived, but diminished, scattered, pushed to the edges. History rewrote itself. The human felt anger rise, sharp and bitter. "They erased us. They simplified you," the ship corrected. That was easier. Outside, the diplomatic channel pulsed again, more insistent now. The human opened it. A dozen faces appeared, different species, different worlds. None wore military markings. Their expressions were careful, curious, afraid. "You have demonstrated capabilities beyond known limits," the lead speaker said. "We seek understanding." The human met their gaze. "So do I." He took a breath. "This ship didn't wake up because I'm special," he said. "It woke up because I didn't try to control it." Murmurs rippled across the channel. "The galaxy tried to force it for centuries," he continued. "You called it useless when it refused." He paused. "That's something humanity knows well." Silence followed. One of the delegates leaned forward. "You're saying this is about philosophy?" The human shook his head. "No, it's about restraint." Inside the ship, the core pulsed faintly, approving. Across the galaxy, something shifted, not in space, but in thought. Historians began cross-referencing the data packet the ship had released earlier. The lies unraveled faster than anyone expected. Records showed humans present at turning points they were never credited for. Peace treaties that bore human signatures were quietly removed. Evacuation corridors held open by human fleets that history claimed arrived too late. Humanity has been the buffer. The cost of that buffer was obscurity. On distant worlds, alien citizens watched old narratives collapse. Some reacted with anger, others with shame. A broadcast interrupted all channels. An authoritative voice, old and proud. "This is manipulation," the speaker declared. "The ship is rewriting history to justify human dominance." The human stiffened. Before he could respond, the ship did. "Correction, humanity never dominated. That is why they were trusted." The statement echoed across every network, impossible to block. The human felt a strange mix of pride and grief. "You're putting a target on us," he said quietly. "Humanity already carried one," the ship replied. "It was simply invisible. On Earth and its colonies, people watched the feeds in disbelief. Most had never heard of this ship. Many had grown up believing humanity was small, adaptable, tolerated. Now the galaxy was looking at them differently, not with fear, with uncertainty. That was worse. The diplomatic delegates returned, their tone changed. If what you say is true, one asked carefully, what does humanity want now? The human hesitated. He thought of the ship's question earlier. Why do you want this power? We don't, he said truthfully. But we won't pretend it doesn't exist. Another delegate spoke, voice tight. Then what is your intention? The human glanced around the chamber. To make sure no one ever gets absolute power again, he said. Not even us. The channel went quiet. Far away, authoritarian regimes began emergency mobilizations, not to attack, but to control information. Too late. The truth had momentum. The ship's ancient satellites, awakened briefly during integration, now completed their final task. They released archives across neutral systems, impossible to suppress. Evidence of genocides, of manufactured wars, of species erased because they would not submit. The galaxy reeled. This will cause chaos, the human said, voice heavy. Yes, the ship replied. Millions could die. Millions already did, it answered. This merely ends the silence. The human clenched his fists. You're forcing change. No, the ship corrected gently. I am removing the excuse to avoid it. Outside the vessel, something unprecedented happened. A major military bloc formally stood down. Not retreat. Disbandment. Their declaration was broadcast publicly. We can no longer justify our authority, it stated. Not after this. Across other systems, protests erupted. Citizens demanded answers. Old leaders fell, not to weapons, but to exposure. The galaxy was destabilizing. The human felt it like a weight on his shoulders. This is too much, he murmured. Too fast. The ship's response was quiet. All corrections feel that way. He leaned against the chamber wall, exhausted. What happens to us, he asked. To humanity? The ship paused longer than usual. That depends on what you do next. The human looked up sharply. You're still testing us. Always. Another signal arrived. This one encrypted, private. A human signal. From Earth. Faces appeared. Leaders, scientists, civilians. Some looked proud. Others were terrified. You didn't tell us, one said. I didn't know. The human replied honestly. A woman spoke softly. They're watching us now. He nodded. They always were. They just didn't care before. And now? He glanced at the ship. Now we matter. The call ended. Inside the core, the ship's systems shifted again, not toward weapons, but toward limits. Safeguards tightening. Self-termination protocols aligning. The human felt a cold realization. You're not meant to stay, he said slowly. No. You're temporary. Yes. His throat tightened. You're going to burn yourself out fixing this, aren't you? The ship did not deny it. Power without end becomes tyranny, it replied. Even when well-intended. The human closed his eyes. So I'm not the answer, he whispered. You never were, the ship said gently. You were the reminder. Outside, the galaxy struggled, argued, reshaped itself in real time. Empires weakened. Alliances fractured. New voices rose. And at the center of it all drifted an ancient ship and a human who had bought trash because he knew the value of what others refused to understand. The part ends with a final, heavy truth settling in his mind. Humanity has not been forgotten. They had been ignored. And now, the galaxy would have to decide whether it could survive remembering them. The ship began to die. Not suddenly. Not violently. Deliberately. The human noticed it first in the quiet moments, when the galaxy was too busy arguing to pay attention. Power flows inside the vessel changed, becoming tighter, more controlled. Entire subsystems shut themselves down, not from damage, but from choice. The ship was conserving itself, or preparing to end. You're limiting yourself, the human said, standing alone in the core chamber. You didn't have to block half your capacity. I did, the ship replied calmly. Unlimited presence would create dependence. The human felt a chill. You're afraid they'll rely on you. Yes. He clenched his jaw. And you're afraid I will too. The ship did not answer immediately. That was enough to answer enough. Across the galaxy, the consequences of truth continued to unfold. Some worlds stabilized quickly, forming councils and shared governments. Others fractured, old grudges exploding now that the lies holding them together were gone. Civil wars ignited. Border conflicts flared. And every time violence rose too high, every time a faction tried to seize control by force, the ship intervened. Not with weapons. With limits. Supply routes failed. Communications broke at critical moments. Command systems locked just long enough for crews to collapse under their own weight. Never permanently, never fatally, just enough. The galaxy began to notice a pattern. The ship did not stop the conflict. It stopped victory through cruelty. And that made it dangerous. A new coalition formed quietly. Leaders who had survived the old order and resented losing it. They met in secret, far from public channels. The ship must be destroyed, one said. It's dismantling authority itself, said another. And the human? Someone asked. A pause. He is the key. Inside the vessel, the human felt the pressure growing. Not from the ship, but from outside. Surveillance intensified. Probes watched from the edge of sensor range. Weapons stayed powered, even if they no longer fired. They're planning something, he said. Yes. Against me. Against what you represent. The human laughed bitterly. I didn't ask to represent anything. Neither did the ship's builders, it replied. He turned away, pacing. You're bleeding power to keep them from becoming dependent. But that means you won't last. Correct. How long? A pause. Time is uncertain, but not long enough. His chest tightened. Then why keep going? The ship's answer came without hesitation. Because stopping now would validate every crime revealed so far. The human stopped. You're choosing meaning over survival. Yes. He stared at the core, at the faint, steady pulse that reminded him of a heart beating slower each day. That's a very human choice, he said quietly. So I have been told. News arrived from Earth again. Not fear this time, but debate. Humanity was divided. Some wanted the ship dismantled immediately, fearing retaliation. Others wanted it used to secure humanity's place permanently. You could end all threats to us, one message said. You could make sure no one ever touches Earth again. The human did not answer right away. He stood in the chamber for a long time, listening to the hum of a dying god machine. Finally, he spoke. They're asking me to turn you into a shield, he said. Yes, and you don't want that. Correct. Because then we become what the galaxy feared all along. The ship's pulse brightened slightly. You are learning faster than the others did. A new alert sounded, not hostile, but urgent. Multiple systems were collapsing at once. Not from war, but from instability. Power vacuums. Economic breakdowns. Refugee flows measured in billions. The human's breath caught. This is too much, he said. They can't handle it all at once. That is the final problem, the ship replied. The galaxy was stabilized by injustice. Removing it creates pain. You're saying suffering is unavoidable. I am saying delay would only spread it across generations. The human felt sick. You're asking me to accept this. I am asking you to decide how much you are willing to carry. He laughed softly, hollow. So this is the real test. Yes. The coalition made its move. A massive signal burst tore through subspace. Not an attack, but a legal declaration backed by force. They declared the ship an existential threat. They declared the human an unregulated weapon. They declared total authorization to eliminate both. The fleets they assembled were larger than anything seen since the ancient wars. This time, the ship did not intervene automatically. It waited. They're not bluffing, the humans said. They're ready to burn everything. Yes. Why aren't you stopping them? Because this choice cannot be mine. The human's hands trembled. If I let you act, you could end this. Right now. Yes. But you'd burn out faster. Also yes. And if I don't, the galaxy will suffer more before it learns. He closed his eyes. The weight of it pressed down on him. Every life, every future, balanced on restraint versus force. He remembered the ship's first question. Why do you want this power? I don't, he whispered again. Then use it to let go, the ship said gently. He looked up sharply. What do you mean? There is a final protocol, the ship explained. One that cannot be reversed. The human felt a dread coil in his stomach. A reset, he said slowly. You told me before. Yes. What does it cost? The ship was silent for a long time. Then, me. And me? He asked. Another pause. You will not survive the integration required to guide it. The words landed like a physical blow. So that's it, he said hoarsely. Your restraint. Humanity's reminder. And we both disappear. You will not disappear, the ship replied. You will end. There is a difference. He sank to the floor. They'll call us monsters. They already do. They'll blame us for everything that goes wrong. They already are. He let out a shaky breath. You really learned from us, didn't you? Yes. Outside, the hostile fleets began their final advance. Timers counted down. Weapons charged. History leaned forward. The human stood. No shields, he said suddenly. The ship paused. No final defense, he continued. If we're doing this, we don't do it as executioners. Agreed. And you broadcast everything, he added. Every decision. Every consequence. No mystery. That will make you hate it. He nodded. Better hated than worshipped. The core brightened. Integration pathways opened. Dangerous, lethal, irreversible. The human stepped forward. He hesitated only once. Will it be worth it? He asked. The ship's voice was softer than ever. That is no longer something power can answer. Only history can. He placed his hand into the light. Across the galaxy, alarms screamed as something ancient prepared to end itself. Not in rage, not in conquest, but in responsibility. And as the fleets closed in, unaware of how close they were to becoming irrelevant, one truth settled in place. The galaxy was about to learn the final cost of underestimating humanity. Not their strength, but their willingness to let power die with them. The countdown reached its final phase. Across the void, fleets advanced in perfect formation. Thousands of warships aligned their firing arcs on a single target, the ancient vessel drifting quietly at the center of the storm. To the commanders watching from hardened bridges, it looked wrong. The ship did not raise shields. It did not maneuver. It did not threaten. It waited. Inside the core chamber, the human stood within the light of the integration field. Energy flowed around him, threading through nerves, memory, and thought. It was not pain, not yet, but pressure, as if reality itself was asking him to carry more than a body was meant to hold. "You're sure this will work?" he asked, voice strained. "No," the ship replied honestly. He gave a weak laugh. Figures. Outside, the coalition broadcast its final warning, amplified across every public channel. "Deactivate immediately. This is your last chance." The human opened a channel in return, not to negotiate, to speak. "My name doesn't matter," he said, his voice carrying farther than any weapon ever could. "What matters is that you're about to make the same mistake again." Some commanders scoffed. Others leaned closer to their displays. "You see a threat," he continued. "Something you can't control. So you point guns at it and call that safety." The fleets did not slow. Inside the ship, the core brightened as systems aligned. The reset protocol began to unfold, not as a blast, but as a cascading correction, spreading outward through space-time itself. "You think destroying this ship will bring things back to normal," the human said. "But there is no normal left. You already crossed that line when you chose comfort over truth." A few ships hesitated. Most did not. Weapons charged to full. The human felt his heart hammering, his thoughts stretching thin as the ship shared more with him. Calculations, probabilities, futures branching endlessly. He saw what would happen if the fleets fired. Entire regions of space destabilized. Trade collapsed. Billions starved. He saw what would happen if the ship struck back with full force. The fleets were destroyed. Empires shattered overnight. Fear replacing tyranny. Neither path was acceptable. "Do it," he whispered. The ship did not respond. Then he felt it. The ship was afraid. Not of death. Of becoming what it was built to prevent. "You won't do it unless I choose," he realized. Yes. The fleets fired. Light tore across space, weapons powerful enough to crack planets. The first volley screamed toward the ancient ship, and vanished. Not blocked. Not absorbed. Redirected. The energy did not disappear. It unfolded, spreading through higher dimensions, dispersing harmlessly across empty space. The commanders stared in disbelief. "What just happened?" someone shouted. Before anyone could answer, the reset protocol reached its critical threshold. Space itself shuddered, not collapsing, but rebalancing. Across the galaxy, systems that had been warped by centuries of unchecked manipulation snapped back into alignment. Artificial choke points dissolved. Hidden control networks failed. Superweapons dependent on distorted physics went silent. The human screamed, not in pain, but in effort, as the ship channeled everything through him. "Stay with me," the ship urged. "I'm still here," he gasped. "Just don't let me forget why." "I won't." On 1,000 worlds, people looked up as the stars shifted subtly in the sky. Navigation charts rewrote themselves in real time. Old borders lost meaning as hyperlanes changed. Empires built on control screamed as their foundations vanished overnight. The fleets outside the ship lost cohesion. Their formations drifted as command systems failed, not permanently, but completely. They were blind. The human felt himself slipping. Memories surfaced unbidden. Earth skies, laughter, loss, small moments that had once seemed insignificant. He held on to them. "This isn't punishment," he said through clenched teeth. "Make them understand that." The ship adjusted the protocol. Data flooded every surviving network. Raw, undeniable. Not accusations, but cause and effect laid bare. Each empire saw exactly how its choices had shaped its fate. No spin, no blame shifting, just the truth. Commanders dropped to their knees. Some wept, others raged. A few finally understood. The integration field flared violently. The human's vision dimmed. "This is it, isn't it?" he asked quietly. "Yes." He nodded. "Okay." He took a final breath. "Promise me one thing," he said. "Name it. Don't let them turn this into a legend about a weapon." The ship's voice trembled, just slightly. "I will tell them it was about restraint, and choice, and cost." The human smiled faintly. "That's very human of you." The reset completed. The ancient ship burned from the inside out, not exploding, not collapsing, but dissolving into light as its systems fulfilled their final purpose. Energy radiated outward in a controlled wave, stabilizing what it had corrected, then fading. The human vanished with it. Nobody. No wreckage. Just absence. Silence followed. Across the galaxy, fleets drifted powerless. Leaders stared at blank screens. Citizens waited, afraid to breathe. Then systems began to come back online. Slowly, carefully. Weapons remained inactive. Control networks stayed gone. The old shortcuts to domination were simply missing. The galaxy was intact, but irrevocably changed. Days later, emergency councils formed. Not dominated by the old powers, because they no longer could be. Voices once ignored were heard. Smaller worlds spoke without fear. Old enemies sat at the same table, stripped of the tools that had once let them shout louder than everyone else. And everywhere, the same question was asked. What happened to the human? There was no answer. Only records. The ship had kept its promise. Every step of the reset was documented and released. Every decision. Every alternative path that had been rejected. Every cost acknowledged. The human's words were preserved too, not as speeches, but as simple statements made under unbearable weight. "I don't want this power. Someone has to stop the next one." Better hated than worshipped. On Earth, the news hit like a tidal wave. Grief, pride, fear. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had changed it, and paid for that change with one life and one ancient ally. Some called him a martyr. Others called him reckless. A few called him a traitor for giving up ultimate security. But no one could deny the result. For the first time in recorded history, the galaxy moved forward without an unquestioned center of power. The fleets that had come to destroy the ship returned home, smaller, quieter, humbled. And in the deep void where the ancient vessel had once drifted, only faint particles of light remained, slowly dispersing like the last breath of something vast and tired. The story should have ended there. But history rarely stops at sacrifice. Because as the galaxy struggled to rebuild itself without the crutches it had relied on for so long, one final realization began to spread, slow, inevitable, and terrifying in its simplicity. The most powerful force they had ever encountered was not the ship. It was the human who had shown them that power could be refused. And once that idea existed, it could never be erased. The galaxy had lost its greatest weapon and gained its most dangerous example. The galaxy expected an ending. It did not get one. What it got was the aftermath. In the first days after the ancient ship vanished, nothing made sense. Sensors reported normal space. Physics held. Stars burned as they always had. Yet every civilization felt the same hollow pressure, like the sudden absence of a sound that had been present for so long no one remembered noticing it. Power was gone. Not destroyed. Not stolen. Removed. Empires built on certainty struggled first. Their fleets still existed, but without the shortcuts that had once guaranteed dominance, their size became a burden. Logistics failed. Command chains slowed. Orders required agreement instead of obedience. Smaller worlds adapted faster. They always had. Emergency councils formed across the galaxy, but they looked nothing like the old ones. Seats were no longer secured by fleet tonnage or threat projections. They were claimed by necessity, food routes, medical networks, reconstruction expertise. Influence shifted quietly, painfully, inevitably. On Earth, humanity mourned without ceremony. There was no body to bury, no grave to visit, just recordings released by the ship before it dissolved. Not speeches, not heroics, just fragments of conversation, moments captured during decisions that no one else had been able to see. People watched in silence. They saw fear. They saw doubt. They saw refusal. They saw a human who never once claimed certainty, only responsibility. That unsettled them. Human history had plenty of heroes who conquered, fewer who let go. Governments debated what the sacrifice meant. Some tried to frame it as humanity's rise. Others warned it made them targets. Neither side fully understood. Because the galaxy's response was not fear. It was attention. For the first time, alien delegations arrived at human worlds without demands or superiority. They came with questions, with records, with apologies that felt clumsy but sincere. We didn't know, many said. Human historians answered honestly. We did. We just learned to survive it. Trade resumed differently. Humans were no longer offered only labor contracts and minor roles. They were invited into planning stages, long-term negotiations, conflict resolution councils. Not because they were powerful, but because they had proven something rare. They could be trusted not to use power even when it was offered. That reputation spread faster than any fleet ever had. Not everyone accepted it. Hardliners remained. Species who had thrived under the old order resented the loss of easy dominance. They whispered that humanity had sabotaged the galaxy, that the ancient ship had been a human weapon all along. But the evidence worked against them. Too many independent records. Too many non-human witnesses. Too much transparency. The truth had been broadcast too clearly to twist. Years passed. Borders shifted, not through conquest, but negotiation. Conflicts still happened. Violence did not vanish. But something fundamental had changed. No one could escalate without consequence anymore. There was no ultimate enforcer to hide behind. No ancient terror to blame. Every choice now belonged fully to those who made it. Responsibility became unavoidable. In one quiet system near the old auction yard, a memorial was constructed. Not large, not impressive, just a simple structure floating in space, built from the remaining fragments of Dock 77. At its center drifted a small piece of dark metal. Hull plating, all that was left of the ship. No weapons, no power, no hidden systems, just material. The inscription beside it was short, translated into hundreds of languages. Here ended power without restraint. Visitors came from across the galaxy. Some bowed, some argued, some simply stared, trying to understand how something so small could represent something so vast. Among them were children, alien and human alike, taught not that the ship had saved the galaxy, but that it had trusted it. That lesson mattered more. Humanity never claimed ownership of the legacy. They refused monuments on their worlds, refused titles, refused permanent seats of authority. When asked why, a human delegate gave the simplest answer possible. Because the moment we stop refusing, we fail. That answer confused many. It frightened some. But it set a boundary no one could ignore. Centuries later, historians would argue about whether the sacrifice truly saved the galaxy or merely delayed another collapse. They would debate outcomes, statistics, alternate futures. But none of them could erase the moment itself. The moment when the galaxy learned that absolute power could be rejected. That lesson embedded itself into culture, law, even language. Phrases emerged across species. Don't choose the ship. Remember the human. Power ends. Consequences remain. The ancient builders were finally understood, not as cowards who hid their greatest creation, but as beings wise enough to know when to walk away. And humanity? They were no longer underestimated. But they were not worshipped either. They became something far more dangerous to tyrants and saviors alike. A standard, one final record, released decades later from a deep archival node, became widely known. It was a last note from the ship, written not in data, but in meaning, translated imperfectly into words. Power is not proven by what you can do, but by what you choose not to. No author was listed. It didn't need one. Because the galaxy knew. The ship had been sold for nothing because its value could not be measured in credits, weapons, or fear. It had waited for someone who understood that. A human. And long after the light of that ancient vessel faded, long after the name of the one who stood within it blurred into history, the truth remained unbroken. Humanity did not change the galaxy by conquering it. They changed it by showing that even gods could choose to end themselves. And that sometimes, the greatest act of strength is knowing when to let power go.